welcome to my channel. It's only 2 days ago. Early man, Denmark, England, Poland. And I said, how come Denmark? Early man in Denmark only goes back 15,000 years. And in England it's 950,000 years. And in Poland 550,000 years. Doesn't make sense. So I came up with different reasons, and then I looked on the net and I found this one. So my 15,000 years have gone to 120,000 years. If you don't look properly, you don't find. I think that one, I think I've seen it before, but it's a little bit like, well, we don't know, and this and that, and I thought, oh, well. But I think actually it's true. So you can better see it here. Ancient tools hint that Neanderthals lived on Danish island 120,000 years ago. So from 15,000 to 120,000, if we keep going like that. Now, it's true that Denmark is a little bit difficult because it's been underwater and the ice has been going up and down and so on. But some parts of Britain, of England has too, and some parts of Poland has too. And so I found this. And this one I'm so happy because it means I am not alone in complaining about this. It says, Neanderthals at the frontier, ? Geological potential of southwestern South Scandinavia as archive of Pleistocene human occupation. What does that mean? It means southwest South Scandinavia. So Scandinavia is here. As Norway, Sweden, Denmark. North, south, east, west. So that's Denmark. Southwestern South Scandinavia, that's Denmark. Could have an archive of Pleistocene human occupation. Now Pleistocene is from I have it here on the wall, 2.6 or 2.8 million years. 2.8 million years to 11,000 years. That's quite a lot. So these guys, they complain, but they do something about it. They say, regarding evidence of human occupation throughout the entire, that's the 2.8 million to 11,000 lower, middle, and early upper Pleistocene, the archaeological record of Scandinavia is scarce. It is highly ambiguous, controversial even. Much of this controversy can be accounted for by a patchy research. Well, that's a little bit here and a little bit there. Characterized by only few research projects. Well, if there's few research projects, you don't look, you don't find. Specifically targeting Neanderthal occupation in Scandinavia. And then they say the way they will go about it, because they are geologists, they will look at the geology of Denmark and see where it is most likely that we can find Neanderthals lived, or some other hominins or humans lived there. So they will look at the landscapes and through this time, and where it was not underwater, and where maybe the ice hasn't done so much damage, and that is actually in Jylland, or Jutland in English. So that's what they're going to do. Now, I went to find out how did they find out that man had lived in England 950,000 years ago. And this is very interesting, because here we go. They found it, and they actually found this.
We've got stone tools in Britain far earlier than we thought, and in an environment where we didn't think early humans were able to live 900,000 years ago. So it really increases our understanding of their capabilities at this time.
So it's at Happisburgh, and that is in Norfolk. Norfolk is on the east coast of England.
At the moment, we're sitting, of course, by the coast, but 800,000 years ago, the landscape would have looked very different. We'd have been sitting in an early course of the River Thames in its estuary, and the actual coast would have been about 15 miles out that way. The river valley itself would have been nice and grassy and open, but would have been surrounded by pine forest. And if we carried on walking down the river to the coast and carried on walking around the edge of the coast, at this time we were joined to Europe, and we'd end up somewhere like Amsterdam. The earliest humans evolved in Africa, and they only reached Europe, we think now about 1.6, 1.7 million years ago, but they're really limited to the southern fringes of Europe at this time. And until recently, we thought humans didn't reach northern Europe till about 700,000 years ago.
So we have people at 700,000 years at Pakefield in Suffolk. And those people were living under Mediterranean conditions, hot, dry summers, warm, wet winters. We thought they were able to come up briefly in those very warm times, and that's the only time they could get up here across a land bridge that existed. But now, with the new Happisburgh data, we have evidence that even earlier than that, they were actually here under cooler conditions, conditions which were in some ways comparable with conditions we might find in, say, southern Scandinavia at the present day. Quite demanding conditions for early humans, and yet they were here in Britain, surviving under those conditions.
The remarkable thing about Happisburgh, the reason that we can find this rich evidence, is that as the cliffs erode back, they reveal these river sediments. And these sediments contain remarkable things like wood, animal bones, tiny little things as small as beetle remains, and most importantly of all, we have the evidence of humans in the stone tools that they left behind.
So this ties in directly with Denmark.
This is one example of the type of flint tools that we're discovering at the site. And in fact, we've only found 60 of these over the last 5 years' work, so they're remarkably rare. The important thing is that they indicate that humans were here. And this particular piece we nicknamed the butter knife because it's so finely made, and you've got this beautiful retouch down that edge. And in fact, this one piece we sent to the Natural History Museum.
CT is basically a method for digitally sectioning an object. We take the stone tool and then using X-rays collect a series of cross-sectional slices through the specimen. And then stack those slices up to make a reconstruction of the specimen, but digitally and on a computer. As far as we know, this is the first time anybody's used computed tomography to analyse stone tools and produce 3D models, and hopefully we can be the first people to start sharing the data and really help try and convince people that what they're looking at is a human-made tool and not just a natural artefact.
What Richard's got with this technology is a way of capturing the shape of these pieces. This flake has been struck off, and we can see here the so-called bulb of percussion. So there was a blow that detached this flake that was made purposefully in that position, and then there's been further modification along the edges by further refined workmanship. So nature might make one or two blows like this in a river gravel, but the systematic flaking we see on a piece like that is only done by humans. We can see that it sits very nicely in the hand, and it's got a cutting edge on both sides. One edge is sharper, one's more a blunted scraping surface, but this would have been useful for skinning and butchering animals, getting the meat off the bones.
And the skin for when it is cold in the winter. And they can only do this in the summer and in all weather, cold,
So we've seen the stone
rain,
tools
whatever.
that Chris and Richie were looking at, and we understand how the tools were made and possibly even used. But here on the site, we're looking at the context. These gravels were laid down by the ancestral Thames, and Nigel's just uncovered a fragment of wood, which is the trunk and roots of a small tree. And it's important because we can identify the plants and the animals that were in the landscape associated with humans. So it provides a huge amount of information about the climate, environment and landscape at that time. So this is just a range of some of the vertebrate fossils from the site. This is a tooth of primitive mammoth. These animals show that the environment was very rich. So you have a large herbivore fauna, but also the carnivores that were eating these animals, and presumably humans were also eating some of the large mammals. We've also got aquatic animals. This one here is stunning, beautifully preserved jaw of an extinct semi-aquatic rodent, and you can see the teeth are still in place in the jaw. So again, that's another animal that indicates quite open environments, slow-flowing rivers or ponds, large lakes. We've also got plant fossils, and because the sediments are waterlogged and deposited very quickly, the preservation is truly remarkable. This is a pine cone, and it's close to 1 million years old, but it's still recognisable as a pine cone. And from all of these finds, we can build up a very detailed picture of the environment. From the plant fossils, the pollen, we know that the vegetation was mostly coniferous. So if you're looking at a modern day analogue, you would go to the boreal zone in southern Scandinavia with a mixture of deciduous but dominant coniferous trees.
So they're living near boreal forests, and they're surviving winters that are colder than the present day. And the summers were warm and reasonable, but the winters were cold. And to get through those cold winters, they must have had significant behavioural adaptations to cope with those conditions. So it takes us up a notch in our understanding and appreciation of what these early people were capable of. And of course, as a paleontologist, I'm hoping we're going to find some human fossils to go with these stone tools to really show what these early people looked like.
So, actually, they're talking a boreal forest, and here is a wonderful map showing, of course, let me see what it is showing. So we have this here. That is the area, this is Arctic, Boreal, which is like the cold climate in the winter and summer. We have warmer, at least now. And that's what he's talking about. And so England is in that, Denmark is in that, Norway, Sweden, and that's what they're talking about. So we have one more. We have one more. And this is about the footprints they found. The oldest footprints in Europe. Wow.
May 2013, Happisburgh in Norfolk. A storm has exposed mysterious traces on the beach. A team of archaeologists is carrying out a rescue dig.
Last week, just walking across the beach, we found this surface, and you can see that it's covered in little hollows and depressions. They've been washed out by the sea, very slowly eroding the sediments away and uncovering that surface. So it's very fragile, very delicate surface. We're wondering whether these are in fact footprints, animal footprints and possibly even human footprints.
There's one just round here with a bit of faith. You might be able to imagine a bit of heel, an arch, and front part of the foot. But
really what we have to do is uncover them and then take very detailed photographs from different angles so we can build a 3D reconstruction. This is one of the most important archaeological sites in Northern Europe, and if these are human footprints, then really we've got this fantastic evidence for early humans that we don't see on many other sites in the world.
In August, the team returns to Happisburgh to investigate the site where the traces were found. Happisburgh is one of the richest paleo-archaeological sites in Europe. Its rapidly receding coastline has already yielded many treasures.
we're finding a remarkable series of finds. This is a jawbone from an extinct type of giant beaver, and a whole range of other creatures such as elephants, rhinos, mammoth, and so on.
Further analysis of the footprints has led to an exciting discovery.
The latest 3D models show these prints in incredible detail. And by measuring the footprints, by looking at the length and the width, we can actually reconstruct the height and the body weight of the individuals. And from that we can show a male and also smaller individuals, which probably included females and youngsters. We don't know what they're doing there, but they're clearly a family group rather than a hunting party. We can't be certain about the human species that left these marks, but we know from the age of the site that in southern Europe there's a species called Homo antecessor, and it's possible that these tracks are actually the footprints left by that early human species. The footprints at Happisburgh are truly an amazing archaeological find. They're without doubt the oldest human footprints in Europe and some of the oldest in the world. It really is a truly remarkable discovery.
So there, this, like, it goes straight back to, it is possible. You have to look. And it's very interesting because the climate has changed so many times, both in England and in Denmark. So why shouldn't Denmark have something hidden? Here in the Norfolk, which is like that nose of England, so much of the coastline has been taken away and now exposing these finds. And the same thing could happen in Denmark. We just have to look in order to find. If you don't look, you don't find. If you don't focus on it, then you don't find. So this is so exciting, because I felt that, wow, only 15,000 years of man in Denmark is like, it's nothing. And I feel that our past goes much further back. And what I'm concentrating on, because I was actually, I was looking at why was China so ahead of Denmark or Northern Europe, and I found out, that's because they never had glaciers, and we have glaciers, and we're being covered. And then I found out, it's not just the glaciers, we've been, underwater many times, and so on and so forth. So I started looking into Denmark, now England, and then we have Siberia, and then we have China. And so I will be comparing these three areas, which are so different, because Denmark and England really are so different from, for example, China, or Siberia, because we are so exposed to the ocean. And these are completely different conditions that our ancestors have had to face. How did they do that? How did they survive? I think we can learn a lot from how they survive. For example, these people often had to migrate. Actually, also in Siberia and China, they were migrating sometimes when the climate was just too bad for them. There were not enough food. They moved. And if we get underwater again in Denmark and Northern Europe, we have to migrate. It doesn't come from one day to another. We have to migrate. And then I was thinking, we don't here in Denmark or Europe welcome those people who migrate from Africa. They migrate from Africa because we have made conditions for them very bad. With trade, we don't pay enough. With the colonial era, exploiting all their raw materials, etc., etc. So we have made, and wars, we have made it very difficult for them to live in their own continent. So they come up here where it's easier. They think it isn't really easier for them. And we treat them very badly. Now, would we like to be treated like that if we have to migrate back to Africa or other warmer areas? Would we like to be treated like that? I think we have to think about this. I think we have to start treating other people like we want to be treated. Same with the refugees that come here. Like in Denmark, in Europe, we have a lot of refugees from the wars that we have made. Syria, Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan. They come here. Do we treat them very well? I don't think so. But we cause them to run away because we were starting wars in their countries. Now look at that. If we have to migrate because of climate and so on, are we going to be treated like that by them as we treated them when they came here. I think we have to look at these things. When we talk about climate change, and some people think it's getting warmer, and others think it's not getting warmer, but if it is getting warmer, if Denmark is going underwater, I think we have to start taking that into consideration when we talk about climate change. Okay, say something about the battery. So I think we have to think about that. Not just it's getting warmer and and CO2 and so on. No, we have to treat people properly. And on that note, let's just be more nice to people. Treat them like we want to be treated. Okay, bye-bye.